Today it's about Alpha Ray, one of TubeOhm's synth VSTs. And right at the beginning I want to say that there is a real nice tutorial about Alpha Ray online already. It's not comprehensive but really inspiring, and it's made by Alpha Ray's producer himself. And although it's completely in German language, I strongly recommend to watch it. See the text and comments below. So, in my tutorial you are watching right now, I'm going through the GUI and the structure and the basic functions quite fast. The only reason why I'm doing that at all is that some people wanted an English explanation of this stuff. After that, I'm going to tell you some details you won't find in the German tutorial and not even in the written manual. Included some behavior of the VST that might make you kind of puzzled in special situations. And as always, Rowfilm has produced a manual based on the one that is shipped with Alpha Ray, but is a lot more comprehensive and completely for free. So ask for details if you are interested in getting it. All sounds, by the way, even the background sounds in this tutorial, are completely and exclusively only Alpha Ray sounds without any additional effects. Only the onboard effects of Alpha Rays, of course. And yes, although Alpha Ray is a quite conventional subtractive VA synth, I admit I like this VST very much, and working with it, you will discover why. So, let's start with a quick overview now. There are 3 oscillators called VSTs, each equipped with 7 waveforms, including white and pink noise. Alpha Ray has got 2 oscillators with a pitch range of 3 octaves, VCO1 and VCO2. From -3 to +3, you see it here. Okay, and by the way, all sliders and all knobs for regulating frequency, you can click on it and you will get the actual value. Alright, as Oscillator 2 here can modulate Oscillator 1, it's of course frequency modulation. Oscillator 2 can be tuned in semitones from 0 to 11 semitones, and in cents -0.1 to +0.1. Alright. By turning up the FM knob of Oscillator 1, you can determine the amount of frequency modulation. The pulse width modulation of oscillators 1 and 2 show effect only with a square wave, of course. VCO1 has got an oscillator sync, a kind of hard sync of VCO1 by VCO2. Some more details later in this tutorial. You can switch on an overdrive for every of the three oscillators individually. The amount of overdrive is controlled by the knob below the switches. There are two filters, a low-pass filter, switchable between state variable and ladder filter. You may call this filter the main filter. And additionally, there is a 6 dB high-pass filter. An interesting option is to link the high-pass filter to the low-pass filter, making them move parallel and so increasing the effect of filter sweeps. LFOs has got 3 different envelopes. One for the cutoff frequency of the low-pass filter, one for the amplifier, loudness, and a third one to modulate either the pitch of VCO1 or 2 or the pulse width of VCO1 or 2 or all these together. The envelope for the filter cutoff has an interesting function called inverse. We'll have to talk about that later, as it is more than just a simple inversion of the adjusted envelope. There are 2 LFOs, which of course can be synced to the host's BPM and also to the keystrokes of a MIDI keyboard or a MIDI event sent by your host. Each of the LFOs has got waveforms, 11 waveforms, shown in this chart. LFO2 can modulate LFO1, and as both LFOs can produce different waveforms independently from each other. You can create real complex modulation courses. Then we have here an analog detune that simulates the sound of vintage analog synths. And there is a whole bunch of functions for the live playing placed around the joystick over here, like the influence of aftertouch on pitch modulation, cutoff frequency, portamento functions, and so on. We will have to talk about the details later. The effect page, let's start a melody, contains overdrive, two times off, three times chorus, delay, and reverb. All right, we will have to talk about the individual functions, very useful ones, by the way, later, I think. Let's talk about some details now. The range of the pitch modulation by the LFO depends on the basic tuning of the VCOs, as this chart shows. The waveforms are sine wave, saw wave, ramp, triangle, square, white noise, and pink noise. There is no audible difference between the saw wave and the ramp, but using overdrive and with values more than 30%, there is an audible difference. Let's put it up a little bit. Back to sine wave. The loudness with the state variable filter, let's put it on here, is lower than with the ladder filter. Look at this value here, going up, going down, going up, even with the filter completely open. But with overdrive, more than 40%, the difference vanishes, and with the overdrive at about 100%, the loudness is lower with the ladder filter. You see the state variable filter is louder now. All right. All right, let's talk about the oscillators sync now. Here, if the frequency of VCO2 over here is exactly 1, 2, or 3 octaves lower than the frequency of VCO1 here, there is no effect at all. Let's have a look at this. Here's the waveform, here is the spectrum. Now 1 octave lower, nothing. 2 octaves, nothing. 3 octaves, nothing. All right. But if the frequency of the VCO2 is exactly 1, 2, or 3 octaves higher than the frequency of VCO1, the output frequency is the higher one, so the frequency of VCO2, and the sound gets sharper and contains more overtones. Let's have a look. 1 octave up, 2 and 3 octaves up. All right. Well, if the frequency of the VCO2 here is not exactly once, 2 times, or 3 times higher in octaves than this frequency of VCO1, for example, because we work with the semitunes or change fine tunes here, then the output frequency is still the higher one, so that of VCO2, but the sound is even sharper and there are even more overtones. You can see here. Let's have a look at an example. If the frequency of VCO2 is lower than that of VCO1, but not by exactly 1, 2, or 3 octaves, the output tone gets deeper and the sound is more gnarled. Let's have an example. There are more overtones in it, and is the frequency of VCO2 very much lower, then you can get some non-musical knocking sounds, quite useful for effects, as the next 2 examples show. You can get wonderfully natural sounding creaking and groaning basses using the sync function, and with the difference of frequencies between the VCO1 and VCO2 less than 3 octaves, and a little bit detuning using the semi function. For example, that one. Some words about the frequency modulation now. The VCO2, as you already know, modulates the VCO1 frequency modulation. Things like overdrive and drive here and the output volume of VCO2 of the modulator, these things don't have any influence of the modulation. Output volume and overdrive and drive regulates the sheer audio output, not the modulation output to the VCO1. The amount of modulation is only regulated by the FM knob here above. Let's at first just listen to simple modulation. Both waves are sine waves. Both frequencies are the same. Let's go. It's quite helpful to describe what happens with the sound. So the higher, here in this example, the higher the amount of FM gets, the brighter the sound gets. From FM0 to FM5, it's about here, FM5, the sound gets more full and sonorous as well. And from FM5 up to FM10, the sound gets still brighter, but also more and more nasal. Let's have a look at that, showing the graphs at the individual stages. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right. In the extended manual, there are a lot of analyses like that with different relationships of the frequency, of course, and not only integer relationships of the frequencies, carrier frequency and modulator frequency. To have at least some of these analyses, the more the better, helps creating a specific sound faster and more precisely. If the difference of the frequencies of VCO1 and VCO2 is not an integer of an octave, for example, with semi higher than 0 or with a different fine tune of VCO2, the results are sounds of metal tubes being hit or bowed or blown, depending on the envelope, or bells or other artificial sounds like these. Just one example with VCO2 plus 1 and plus 1 octave and semi 4, okay, 4 semitones up, and FM at 5. Okay, it's going to be a bell sound with a short decay and no attack, but increasing the attack delivers a ghostly sound when playing low notes. Okay, here we go.